This will be an emotional week. In fact, emotional may be an understatement. The ceremony is expected to start at 11 a.m. Both President Trump and Vice President Mike Pence are expected to address the crowd of hundreds of family, friends, and loved ones of fallen officers. The commission essentially calling out the NCAA, telling it to take control of the sport and clean up the mess it made. Rescue crews saying it's just too dark in the terrain and the creek is too rough for them to continue at this point. They have been out here for hours. Investigators say David Esquivel is a convicted child molester and two-time felon, yet somehow he found work at the Zionsville Presbyterian Church daycare. And the fact that he was arrested in the first place was a complete coincidence.
It's understandable that some of our viewers may have some of those similar questions, such as, okay, now what? Why should I care? Well, it turns out that those very simple questions don't have simple answers.
According to the FBI estimates, about 750,000 adults are trying to seek out sex with children at any given time. The Chat Analysis Triage Tool, or CAT, essentially helps to determine the likelihood that a sex offender will meet up with an underage victim. Another highlight of the president's speech is when he called on the Department of Justice to do what it can to help protect law enforcement, saying we believe criminals who kill police should get the death penalty. Bring it forth. At the end of the ceremony, Senators Joe Donnelly and Todd Young presented Congressman Lewis with a trailblazing award for his service and years in fighting for civil rights. He accepted the award, thanked the crowd, then said, "Now go get warm."
This is the first time I've had it out for years.
Whether it's looking at 50-year-old newspapers or walking through downtown Richmond, Mark Stover can't help but remember everything from April 6, 1968.
This was ground zero.
That day, as residents were shopping and enjoying their day, a large gas explosion erupted at 6th and Main. The blast also ignited gunpowder and ammunition at a sporting goods store and sent fireballs hundreds of feet into the air.
And about where those windows are is where I couldn't go any further. The heat was so intense that I had to stop and turn around.
Mark was just 17, but he worked to help those affected by the blast. That's him in the newspaper scaling a building to help a 12-year-old girl trapped on a roof. Those moments, unlike anything the Vietnam veteran has experienced since that day.
I cannot remember seeing an explosion in Vietnam as I was in combat that equaled the explosion of downtown 1968.
Diane Johnson.
In total, 41 people died. Today, first responders in the Wayne County Historical Museum honored those victims with a new memorial inscribed with all 41 names.
Let's allow this time of reflection to be a time to very personally and individually understand the value of human life and that no day is guaranteed.
For people like Joellen Trimble, who lost her husband James in the explosion, the day provided some much-needed closure.
It is very touching to be here. It brings back a lot of memories, both good and bad.
And for Mark Stover, a chance to make sure that April 6, 1968 is never forgotten.
This will be a true history statement for this community.
In Richmond, Nick McGill, Fox 59 News.
Earlier this afternoon, we responded to a report of an accidental discharge of a firearm at the IKEA.
That's not exactly a sentence one might expect to hear, but Fishers Police Sergeant Tom Weger says it's extremely fortunate we're not hearing about somebody being seriously injured or worse.
What I can tell you is nobody was injured at all.
Weger says around 2 o'clock this afternoon, a man who was carrying a gun inside the Fishers IKEA store was sitting on a couch. At some point, he got up, but his gun dislodged and stayed behind. At the time, he didn't realize it and walked away. Then this happened.
A child found it and pulled the trigger, and causing the firearm to discharge.
It could have been much worse. No one was hit and the store actually stayed open. Later, IKEA management issued this statement saying in part, the safety and security of customers and co-workers is the top priority, and that the store is cooperating with police as they investigate this incident. Police say they're forwarding their investigation to the prosecutor, but when it comes to any charges the gun owner might face,
so I actually doubt there will be criminal charges filed.
The law can be complicated. Gun expert and attorney Guy Relford says the fact that no one was hurt plays in the gun owner's favor. He says perhaps the closest charge he could receive is criminal recklessness, but that states the person has to knowingly, intentionally, or recklessly commit an act. He says this case sounds much more like an inadvertent error.
That can translate into civil liability, but that alone typically does not result in criminal culpability.
In any case, police say today should serve as a lesson to those about responsible gun ownership.
You know, you need to make sure that if you're going to carry a firearm that you keep it under your control at all times.
You're going to be busy.
Yeah. Even in the late innings of life,
It really does. Makes me happy. It does.
it's possible to find yourself in the middle of your glory days.
Oh, yeah, I like to remember that.
60 years ago, Ira McKnight was in his prime, a catcher for Negro League's icon, Kansas City Monarchs. Ira never made it to the bigs, but the game never left him.
It was exciting, you know, it's exciting.
He will tell you anything and everything about baseball.
I was the boss behind the plate.
Today, Ira is 82 and lives here at the Greenwood Healthcare Center. But when the staff heard about his baseball past, they decided to throw him a postseason bash.
I was really surprised. It made me really happy.
Giving Ira one more time to feel the rush the game once brought him.
Oh, yeah, I want one.
It might not be in a good position because I might be right and, you know, that's it.
For a few hours, Ira got to turn back the clock,
How you doing, young lady?
sign a few autographs, and hand out his baseball card, all the while surrounded by the trappings of his favorite game.
Get a baseball, have them sign with an ink pen. Because you get a marker, it what messed it up.
For him, it's a slice of heaven.
Hey, bring him back here. Bring him back here.
And for those who care for him, it was pretty darn close.
We're all family, so seeing him happy is just the icing on the cake for the building.
In the end, Ira says he doesn't know how much time he has left. He says he'll be lucky if he makes it to 83. But for one day, all his years didn't weigh heavy on his body. Today, his glory days had another chance to step up to the plate. For Fox 59 News,
Most of my friends now are gone. So I'm lucky to be living.
I'm Nick McGill.
But I just throw you in my trunk.
Before the sun even rises, Advance Town Marshal Brad Thomas is already on the job.
What started as a kind gesture has grown into a community thing.
Thomas isn't on official duty. He's not even wearing his uniform. But what he's doing is making a difference. At least he hopes so.
I got hot fudge sundae today.
I like the sundae.
All right. How you doing? What flavor you want? Got fudge, strawberry, blueberry. You want blueberry too? Blueberry's my favorite.
Every morning, Thomas stands on the corner of Main Street and greets
Strawberry
teenagers as they head to their school bus,
Is that the right one?
bringing with him boxes of Pop-Tarts or other food as a morning pick-me-up.
It gives us an excuse to build a relationship, and you know, just to get out of the car and something about food brings people together. I don't know what it is.
Thomas says he started using his Pop-Tart policing method when he became town marshal 6 weeks ago. Needless to say, it's earned him some fans.
I like that he just keeps coming back. It makes me really happy to know that somebody actually cares enough to make sure that we don't go to school hungry.
I think he knows everybody in the town already, which isn't hard to do, but...
Wait till the door's open.
Realistically, Thomas says any food he brings could be the only thing some of the kids eat all morning.
Hey, Colton, what's up?
And for him, that makes it worth it. But the biggest perk comes from letting them know he's here for them, which means they can build healthy relationships with law enforcement.
Hey, Michael, have a good day.
That will extend years beyond the bus stop.
If you can help one kid a year, one kid a month, down the road you've done something. It's over time. It's kind of like interest. It builds over time.
What if you could stop a predator from ever meeting the child they're targeting? At Purdue, researchers believe they can do just that.
And so the goal, again, is to identify which ones that are a higher risk.
Assistant Professor Catherine Siegfried Speller is part of the team behind CAT, the chat analysis triage tool. She says using chat rooms and messages, CAT can identify sex offenders most likely to try and set up face-to-face meeting with children, filtering them out from those more driven by fantasy and cybersex.
We can flag or triage for law enforcement a higher risk of somebody showing up, then in theory, law enforcement might be able to intervene before a sex offense happens.
It uses some natural language processing, something called psycholinguistic analysis, content analysis, and some statistics.
Professor Marcus Rogers won't give away exactly how CAT works, but says essentially they're analyzing intention. Working with law enforcement across the country, they use thousands of real conversations between predators and victims, breaking down the language used and the outcomes.
How much of a risk is this individual to actually do something bad in the future, in this case, contact offend.
Roger says one of the biggest benefits of CAT is how quickly and accurately it's able to detect a predator's intentions, displaying the results with a simple gas gauge type model.
And the testing we've done, a typical case that might take 3 months for somebody to come to a decision, is this person a risk? We can do in a matter of seconds.
Seconds that could help law enforcement better use resources in the fight against online predators, but most importantly, help save future victims.
If we can help, create a more efficient process and then potentially stop a sex offense from occurring, I think that's the ultimate goal here.
For Cadence and Salem Weaver, a perfect day was the perfect gift.
Hi, how are you? Are you excited?
You see those? Yeah.
Merry Christmas!
Salem is 4, Cadence just 2. And for the past few months, Cadence has been battling cancer, though today you might not know it. About a month ago, the girls came up with a crazy Christmas wish. They wanted Christmas cards, 500 of them. Possible, sure, but no one could expect their crazy Christmas wish would turn Christmas miracle. A perfect day that started in Mrs. McKissick's 8th grade class.
I know that sometimes the little things mean a lot.
McKissick, a teacher at Pendleton Heights Middle School, heard about the girls' request. She put the challenge to her students.
So I just asked my classes if they would make something, and then Sydney asked, she said, can we have the whole school do it and we can get 500 just here?
Yeah, I was like, it's possible, it's easy, we got this.
She was right.
We got all kinds of new stuff today. It's amazing, especially for junior high students. You don't always see the compassionate side of them, you know. Honestly, some of my tougher students made 2 or 3 cards.
Amazing, but for Cadence and Salem, it was just the beginning.
It's Christmas. It's time to give.
Almost 20 miles away, the Noblesville Fire Department cooked up their own surprise.
After we jumped on board, the mayor's office jumped on board, employees of City Hall jumped on board. The next thing you know, we had cards coming from other communities that were being dropped off here.
Todd Estes said when he and the crews heard about the girls, they immediately jumped in. Sure, they probably couldn't get the most cards, but the biggest, yeah, that's no problem.
The firefighters wanted to tell you guys Merry Christmas. It's people all over. It's wonderful.
And a few tough but tender firefighters were more than up to the task.
To see her smile, to see the positive attitude, both from her sister, and her family, is wonderful.
Wonderful. And the perfect day continued on. At the post office, a quick glimpse at the outpouring of local and national support. And back at the girls' home,
I would say probably 10,000 plus, maybe.
A closer look at the distance that support traveled.
We've gotten some from Australia, Canada, Germany.
There are no words, and the day still wasn't over.
Did you ask for Christmas cards?
Yeah.
In Tipton,
it just fills my heart with joy. It absolutely fills my heart with joy.
Outreach from across the community, including the police and sheriff's department, provided the perfect finale. Of course, Santa Claus and a tree full of gifts always helps.
The girls deserve it, absolutely. I cannot imagine being 2 years old and going through what she's been through. And as you can see, it's not slowing her down. It's an amazing thing.
By day's end, it became abundantly clear this was one of the best days these girls ever had. For one perfect day, hope, love, and gratitude were in no short supply. And as for cancer, well, on this day, it didn't stand a chance.
I was happy. I was really shocked.
More than you could have wished for?
Yes.
For Fox 59, I'm Nick McGill.